Tonight on 24, the IRGC's threat against vessels passing through the Strait of Hormuz without coordination. At the same time, the foreign ministers of the US and Oman emphasize passage through this waterway without paying tolls. Kalibaf's reaction to Trump's remarks about selling American grain to Iran. The parliament speaker says the only American product for the Islamic Republic is distrust. And a new warning from the World Organization Against Torture. This organization's report says the Islamic Republic uses torture as a tool of governance. From the Iran International Studio, this is 24 with Fardad Farahzad. Hello and good evening to Iran International viewers in Iran and around the world. Amidst the disputes in the Strait of Hormuz over ship passage, data from the Marine Traffic Vessel Tracking Service shows that at least 3 oil tankers that were exiting the Persian Gulf changed course and returned. 3 other oil tankers also changed their course towards the northern waters near Iran's coast. Meanwhile, hours ago, according to the Wall Street Journal, 2 senior American officials said the IRGC Navy targeted a Singapore-flagged cargo ship in the Strait of Hormuz. This comes as the IRGC had warned vessels in a radio message on Thursday that passage through the Strait of Hormuz is only possible with the IRGC Navy's permission and via designated routes.
Attention all vessels, attention all vessels, attention all vessels in Persian Gulf and Oman Sea. This is SEPA Navy warning. Transiting in the Strait of Hormuz is only possible with SEPA Navy permission and on designated routes. If any vessel attempts to transit in the strait without our permission or AIS off or outside of the designated route, it's responsible for any consequences of any danger. This is SEPA Navy out.
The UN Maritime Organization also said it has temporarily halted the implementation of a temporary plan to evacuate ships and seafarers stranded in the Strait of Hormuz after an attack on a vessel. Meanwhile, in Bahrain, the Gulf Cooperation Council, in a meeting attended by the U.S. Secretary of State, had announced that any understanding in the region must guarantee the security of the Persian Gulf and freedom of navigation. Our correspondent, Samira Karai, has joined us from the White House. Samira, it seems that the main connecting point of this initial Memorandum of Understanding, which was at least the opening of the Strait of Hormuz, is now facing challenges from Iran's side.
That's right. The actions the Islamic Republic has taken since yesterday in the Strait of Hormuz are inconsistent with the commitment it made in the Memorandum of Understanding regarding the Strait of Hormuz. In exchange for opening the Strait of Hormuz, the United States, lifted the naval blockade. The naval blockade was lifted even before the Strait of Hormuz was opened. In these recent days, the Islamic Republic has successfully managed to export millions of barrels of oil since Lake Fardad, demonstrating its ongoing capability. However, what transpired yesterday directly ignited these escalating tensions. The broadcasted warning messages ultimately culminated in a concerning missile firing incident targeting the specific tanker we are currently discussing. So what happened was that the International Maritime Organization introduced a bypass route, which went quite a bit into Oman, this route. And this was announced as an alternative route for that huge number of tankers and ships that have been stuck in the Persian Gulf for over 100 days. A huge maritime traffic jam has formed there. So to be able to clear that area, to make it less crowded, to open up a route, they announced this as a bypass route. The International Maritime Organization stated it coordinated a route opening with regional countries like Oman, Iran, and the United States. Despite claims of Iran's involvement, it's unclear who from the Islamic Republic specifically coordinated with the organization. This route opened, and from there, tankers started passing. The numbers, are just going higher and higher, the number of tankers passing through, until the IRGC came and warned that these tankers shouldn't use that route, which then led to a firing that the Wall Street Journal is now reporting, citing informed American officials, was from the IRGC side. Specifically, a tanker in Qasr, Iraq, started its route from there to go towards Singapore. It was Singapore flagged, without any warning, without receiving any emergency message message on the radio. They hit this tanker, which is named Ever Lovely. It was leading. It was at the forefront. 3 other tankers were coming behind it. Its speed was higher. When they hit this one, the 3 other tankers turned back. The IRGC claims they were able to turn back 5 tankers. These tensions are continuing. The valid questions that arise are, if the Islamic Republic said it would open the strait, why has it become necessary to define a new maritime route? If a new route has been defined because the mine-clearing operation wasn't fast enough, why isn't the IRGC happy about this issue? And why is all of this happening at a time when Mr. Ruby is in the region? From June 12th until today, Friday, tomorrow will be 2 weeks that the Islamic Republic hadn't fired at a tanker. During this trip, questions emerged regarding potential disagreements between the Islamic Republic and Oman over the Strait of Hormuz. Mr. Ruby extensively discussed this critical waterway during his Middle East visit. We will now hear parts of his speech.
The Strait of Hormuz is an international waterway. This waterway does not belong to any specific country. This is one of the fundamental principles of today's global order. If we accept that a country, simply because an international waterway is located near its territorial waters, can charge a fee for passage through it, then this practice could spread throughout the world. If today one country decides to charge money for the use of an international waterway, what will prevent other countries from imposing similar restrictions on their nearby waterways tomorrow? The result of such a situation will be nothing but chaos. So this issue is unacceptable. It doesn't matter if you call it transit fees or any other title. The reality is that no country has the right to charge fees for the use of international waterways, and this can never be part of an acceptable agreement.
Fardad. As we're hearing from these discussions, the main issue is those Iranian arrangements, what Ghalibaf describes as collecting fees under any title. The Wall Street Journal has published a report saying that the Islamic Republic is looking to establish a new legal system there. Although it can't collect transit fees like, say, the Suez Canal or the Panama Canal, it's looking to do something similar to the Dardanelles Strait in Turkey, where Turkey can collect fees. It's a complex legal discussion, and the Islamic Republic is trying to do something similar. It has also spoken with various parties in the Persian Gulf, with China, and with the U.S. about collecting some fees there, for example, on the basis that if there's a lighthouse, or if I have ships there with a doctor, and someone passing through encounters a problem, I've provided them with a doctor. Under all these pretexts, the Islamic Republic is trying to collect money, and it seems all these problems we've witnessed in the past 24 hours are over these disagreements, specifically because the Omanis announced yesterday that no fees would be collected. Just this morning, Mr. Arachi spoke with his Omani counterpart, Usaidi, about tensions in the Strait of Hormuz. The discussion about fees, about the Islamic Republic collecting money, is being pursued. We know the Memorandum of Understanding allows the Islamic Republic to talk with Oman, with the Persian Gulf littoral states, to see what they want to do. The Islamic Republic is looking to earn $40 billion annually from these very funds. It has even suggested to Arab countries, you can also come and get a share, and has suggested to the US that we all get a share if we all come together and want to collect such fees. But this trip Mr. Roby has made seems to be pushing this idea back a bit. It has influenced the Persian Gulf littoral states. We're seeing an example of it with Oman, where they're canceling the discussion of collecting money. Fardad.
Thank you, colleague Samira Karai from the White House. The Saudi Ministry of Foreign Affairs also emphasized support for political solutions and ensuring maritime security and freedom of navigation in the region during the GCC meeting. Meanwhile, Abbas Arachi has stated that discussions with Oman regarding the framework for maritime management and services in the Strait of Hormuz are ongoing, and this process is also being pursued with other neighboring countries. Ghassan Ashur, a Middle East analyst, has joined us from Boston. Mr. Ashur, right at the start, this Memorandum of Understanding hasn't even, its ink hasn't dried yet, even though it was a digital signature. It seems that Iran is creating a problem regarding the passage of ships through the Strait of Hormuz. But on the other hand, it also seems, apparently, something is happening that has worried the Islamic Republic, and that is the increased passage of these ships through the southern part of the strait, in Oman's coastal waters.
Yes, first I want to state this clearly. It would indeed be naive for anyone to assume that Iran, simply because an agreement has been formally implemented, would immediately allow ships to pass freely without creating any further complications. This is because, concurrently, their strategic demands concerning Lebanon remain unaddressed. Furthermore, their demands for the release of their financial assets, which the Americans continue to block, have also not been fully met, leaving key grievances unresolved. So in order to be able to bargain in the future, at least for this reason, now they might have other reasons too, it was clear that they would create problems from time to time. Right now, as you reporter also mentioned, Mr. Roby is in the region and he's talking about this. So they also want to show that they still have the power, despite this agreement, to close off this region. The fact that it's been discussed that we have an agreement or a memorandum of understanding for 60 days doesn't mean that Iran will now actually fully adhere to it, because the other parties also have a different interpretation, meaning the Americans' interpretation of Iran regarding this memorandum of understanding is different. The Israelis is also different. Each of them, what they say, actually everyone agrees on 80% of what's in this agreement, but they have different interpretations for about 10 to 20% of it. It was anticipated that involved parties would individually pursue their objectives wherever feasible. Currently, Iran is actively engaging in these specific endeavors to enhance its negotiating position on broader international issues. However, the prospect of Iran unilaterally imposing and collecting transit fees from ships in the future is extremely unlikely. Such a move would directly contravene established international maritime laws and conventions. Moreover, any attempt would undoubtedly trigger unified and forceful opposition from the global community, making it impossible and preventing widespread disruption. For instance, right now, the Americans have disagreements with Europe. There are disagreements between the US and Israel, and even Arab countries are disappointed with American support during a war with Iran. The disagreements that exist among them, if Iran can actually implement this, will disappear, and everyone will unite against Iran. So my thought is that Iranians are actually using this as a step for negotiation, and it's highly probable that at least some at the top of the Islamic Republic know that this won't actually be implemented. At this critical juncture, the current negotiations, this particular factor represents an undeniably crucial source of influence. Indeed, it is the sole and most vital leverage they currently possess.
At this moment that we're speaking, apparently the issue of Iran isn't really just about tariffs. I also see that Shahram Koldi, an analyst of Middle Eastern affairs and a researcher of Middle Eastern history and international relations, has also joined us from Ontario. Welcome, Mr. Koldi. Let me ask you this. It seems that at this point, Iran isn't really concerned, at least not in these 60 days, about collecting tolls. Concerns have emerged regarding a new shipping corridor in the southern Strait of Hormuz via Omani waters. Despite existing agreements, there's apprehension that vessels are utilizing this route without coordinating with Tehran. This lack of communication potentially places them in a difficult situation.
Exactly so, sir. I send my greetings to Mr. Ashur and the brave people of Iran. Let me tell you, you see, the issue is the same, and based on the interpretations that the highest American officials have given in their private conversations over the past 2 or 3 weeks. Now, in various ways, it's abundantly clear from this comprehensive memorandum of understanding that this specific MOU is fundamentally about. It's not about the nuclear issue. It's not about any of these issues. First and foremost, it's not even about sanctions. The issue is about the Strait of Hormuz being opened. If positive behavior is observed from the Islamic Republic to assure America's allies in the region and the United States that they are showing good conduct, then gradually those other issues will be addressed. Permission for oil, the release of some of the money they have here and there and other issues. The Strait of Hormuz undeniably represents a double-edged sword for the Islamic Republic. While its potential closure might offer temporary leverage, such a move paradoxically drives other nations to seek permanent alternatives. Specifically, by threatening to close it, Iran compels Arab countries to actively pursue new oil pipelines, diverse energy sources, and alternative shipping routes to bypass the strait altogether. This dynamic is not without historical precedent. When Gamal Abdel Nasser nationalized the Suez Canal, sparking international conflicts, it prompted nations like South Korea and Japan to develop supertankers. These vessels were designed specifically to navigate around the entire continent of Africa, effectively bypassing the Suez Canal and negating its strategic chokehold. Thus, attempts to control such vital maritime passages ultimately accelerate efforts to circumvent them, reducing future reliance. This dramatically reduced Egypt's revenue from the Suez Canal, a vital economic artery, causing its income to drastically decrease based on established customs and company figures. This severe financial strain was a significant motivation for President Anwar Sadat to sign Camp David, especially since even during periods of peace and open navigation, insurance companies were imposing exceptionally heavy tariffs on all Travidan vessels due to perceived regional risks. A strikingly similar situation is now developing in the Strait of Hormuz, with geopolitical tensions driving up prohibitive insurance costs for critical global shipping routes. Even if the Islamic Republic disavows involvement, stating, "I have nothing to do with this issue," and despite a second shipping route potentially emerging near Oman, the economic viability of the Strait of Hormuz is fundamentally compromised. The persistent perception of geopolitical risk and instability will ensure that insurance premiums for cargo transiting Hormuz remain prohibitively high. These elevated costs would render the strait economically unviable for most international trade, making goods significantly less competitive. Therefore, the issue isn't solely about the Islamic Republic's good behavior or the consequences of disobedience. The crucial point is that Iran cannot effectively wield the strait as both a coercive stick and an enticing carrot, because its own economy, critically dependent on oil exports and vital imports, is equally reliant on the strait's consistent and unobstructed flow.
Mr. Ashur, Mr. Koldi referred to this situation of the Strait of Hormuz as a card. Do you think the Islamic Republic has overplayed this card to the extent that it might sooner or later backfire on them and no longer hold the same value it did during the war or even recently?
No, I don't think Iran has overused its current strategy yet. If they pursue this approach aggressively over the long term, it will undeniably unite others against them. This means that significant disagreements among Arab countries, America, Israel, and Europe regarding potential war or even diplomatic agreements will be entirely set aside. These disparate nations would then coalesce into a formidable united front against Iran. Frankly, I question whether Iran's top leadership truly comprehends that overplaying this card will ultimately be profoundly detrimental to their own interests. But at this juncture, given that a 60-day deadline has been given to all parties, I don't think they are actually overplaying their hand. I think they are using this to achieve other concessions. But ultimately, they will be forced to open it, because as your dear guest mentioned, Iran itself also needs to use it. Its closure would mean its closure for Iran as well. One aspect is Iran's desire to close it.
Mr. Ashur, I apologize. Our connection with you was interrupted. For a few moments your voice was cut off. Mr. Koldi, it's clear that the Islamic Republic will do its best to be able to generate income from the Strait of Hormuz. My colleague mentioned it. They're talking about something around $40 billion a year, which is almost 3 to 4 times the money even the Egyptians earn from the Suez Canal. I know that, well, most of the world naturally opposes it, but the number of countries that have such a position is also very limited. Global maritime choke points are crucial, as seen with Morocco and Spain in Gibraltar, and Singapore and Indonesia in Malacca, along with other key examples. Some of these vital passages are also man-made, such as the Suez and Panama canals, essential for global trade. The question is, if the Islamic Republic uses its formidable leverage of fear, threat, force, drones, missiles, and other aggressive tactics, could Tehran compel the international community to pay tolls, even against their express wishes?
Look, Mr. Ashur is referring to the 60-day issue. A week of these 60 days has already passed. Before we know it, 60 days will also pass. Right now, we are on the anniversary of the 12-day war. 60 days is really a short time in these international equations. And the Islamic Republic, based on the interpretation that high-ranking American officials have of this Memorandum of Understanding, has precisely turned the Strait of Hormuz and its opening into a bone of contention, such that if the Islamic Republic wants to overuse it, or rather misuse it, then everyone will look for other ways. Saudi Arabia, the Emirates, all of them are even now looking to not only send their oil by land and pipeline, but everyone is also thinking about sending gas by land and pipeline. If this happens, then it's actually the Egyptians who benefit the most, because this goes to the Red Sea, and from there, via the Suez Canal, it goes, for example, to Europe. Now, the Japanese might face a problem, but that problem is solvable, because it comes to this side, to the Arabian Sea, actually, and is sent from there, unless the Islamic Republic wants to use the Houthis. You mentioned the issue of man-made and artificial canals. Allow me to add this, following Ms. Garai's remarks. The convention concerning the Dardanelles, a crucial waterway, was concluded between the two world wars. This diplomatic agreement arose due to significant strategic and navigation issues encountered within the Dardanelles Strait during World War I, making its context quite distinct. Regarding Spain and Morocco, as you mentioned, Britain has steadfastly maintained a massive and strategically vital naval base on that iconic rock of Gibraltar for over 300 years. This long-standing presence means it's not simply a matter where Spain and Morocco can unilaterally decide its fate. The British Royal Navy, after all, remains considerably more powerful than the combined naval forces of Spain and Morocco, a superiority it has repeatedly demonstrated through its operational capabilities. Even if Spain wants to leave NATO someday, what is it going to do with Britain? Look, in my opinion, the example that should be brought up here is the example of the Mozambique Channel, or the English Channel. Aren't Britain and France dominant over the English Channel? Doesn't all of Northern Europe depend on the English Channel? Have they come to collect tolls from it in the past 300 years? Other nations secure vital waterways with their naval forces, spending their own resources and not collecting tolls, directly benefiting from open passage. The Islamic Republic could gain billions, even hundreds of billions, from the Strait of Hormuz. However, this potential is lost because it refuses to join international agreements as a normal actor, instead trying to extort and turn the strait into a bandit's pass. Rather than extorting and turning the Strait of Hormuz into a bandit's pass, it could gain hundreds of billions. For example, just look at Iraq. Why should Iraq practically throw itself to the other members of the Persian Gulf Council just to avoid paying tolls? Because Iraq actually has the most fragile and sensitive position regarding the Persian Gulf. Iraq doesn't have the same access to the Persian Gulf that others do. Actually, Iraqis, more than anyone, and I'm sorry to have to put it this way, have the Islamic Republic's foot on their throats, and it's suffocating them. So it seems to me that if there's going to be a way forward, just as high-ranking American officials said in that private press conference that, well, a convention should be concluded regarding the issue of the Persian Gulf and the Strait of Hormuz, the same fate will befall Iran, as happened with the Caspian Sea Convention, because the majority of those countries are countries that, in every respect, in terms of international language, cultural language, economic language, political language, they speak each other's language. And even if Oman and Qatar ally with the Islamic Republic, such a convention would be to the detriment of the Islamic Republic and to the detriment of Iran, with or without tolls.
Thank you to Ghassan Ashur, Middle East analyst from Boston, and Shahram Koldi, history researcher from Ontario. Republican Senator Rick Scott also told Fox News that Donald Trump's readiness for heavy bombing of Iran and imposing a naval blockade forced the Iranian government to come to the negotiating table. He said the Middle East is now in a more peaceful state, but Democratic Senator Elizabeth Warren has a completely different view. Let's hear part of her remarks.
Every time we hear one report out of Iran, the situation is such that every time we hear a report from different places, an hour later, we hear something completely different. It's exactly the same chaos as the first few days, and no one could properly explain why we even had to bomb Iran. The answers were changing hourly, sometimes even by the minute, and the officials, each of them was saying something different. Now it's exactly the same chaotic situation. It's really important for this war to end, but Donald Trump needs to be held accountable for what he's done.
Donald Trump needs to be held accountable for what he has done.
My colleague Marzi Hosseini joins us from Congress. Marzi, well, regarding someone like Senator Warren, if she had said anything in support of Mr. Trump, it would have been strange and unusual. But in recent days, we've heard that even some of Mr. Trump's traditional supporters and fans had points of disagreement regarding this agreement. However, it seems that the White House, in various ways, from sending Mr. Trump himself to Congress to private in-person meetings with some lawmakers, with figures like Steve Wyckoff and even J.D. Vance, is trying to at least convince their own party members that this agreement is a good one.
And not in a peaceful way. Apparently, this Trump, who came here yesterday to the U.S. Congress, officially started yelling his head off, shouting and even swearing, Fardad. This forced the Republican lawmakers to stay until 10 p.m., like late last night in the U.S. Congress, to go and vote again, to say they don't oppose continuing the war in Iran. So right now, officially, as we speak, the resolution to end the war in Iran has been withdrawn, which, like, its very approval was historic. And its withdrawal is also historic. There's like a whole story here in Congress. Senator Cassidy claims he yelled at Trump during a crucial meeting yesterday, demanding to know why the Iran war, projected to end in 4 weeks, was still ongoing. According to Cassidy, Trump yelled back louder, calling him crazy and telling him to go take back your vote and that it was none of your business. After a significant argument during a meeting, Trump told reporters it was good, though he disliked some participants, and confirmed it focused entirely on Iran. Later, around 9 or 10 p.m., a vote was withdrawn. Mr. Cassidy was questioned about this withdrawal, specifically asked if Trump had called him crazy, and probed for details about the meeting. He noted a schoolyard fight had occurred. During a meeting, he texted Didikoff, who was there. He questioned the ongoing war in Iran, demanding an explanation. Didikoff invited him to the White House. After the meeting, he went there, where Didikoff and J.D. Vance explained the situation. Their explanation led him to conclude they were right. Right now, it doesn't look good for us to abandon Trump in front of the Iranians. So in short, they voted. And those two who had defended this resolution to end the war in Iran, Rand Paul and Cassidy, withdrew their votes. And now we're in a situation where the U.S. Congress hasn't abandoned Trump anymore. Late last night, Trump also published a post on his social media saying, now the message has been delivered to the Iranians, meaning we have no problem continuing the war in Iran. But the question arose, why did Trump do this? Despite dismissing Congress, Trump personally appeared with his Iran team to withdraw a resolution, revealing the Iran war's true importance to him. This raises questions about potential renewed attacks on Iran. Republican opinion on this matter is crucial. We'll hear Senator Shaheen's perspective from a recent interview.
I've said repeatedly,
I've said many times that I don't want even $1 to be given to them. If they're going to be allowed access to financial resources in any way, whether through the unfreezing of blocked assets or oil revenues, there must be specific control mechanisms from our side. There must be specific control mechanisms from our side, meaning this money should be held in an escrow account, and we control where it's spent and what it's used to buy. Under no circumstances do I think giving them any amount of money is a good idea, because they will use it to buy bullets, bombs, and kill Americans.
With that said, this resolution that was withdrawn, even though Democrats say it hasn't changed the situation at all, and legally doesn't revoke the previous resolution that was passed. As Senator Kaine says, the train has left a station. So now no matter how much Trump comes here and shouts and screams in Congress, he can't change the main opinion. After Trump left the U.S. Congress, he sent a bill to the U.S. Congress to approve and give them more money. The bill specifically amounts to approximately $67 billion just for this war, of which $21 billion is for purchasing and replacing important war munitions, and $300 million is also for the security of U.S. embassies in the region in case of another war by Iran.
Thank you. My colleague Marzieh Hosseini at Congress. The Speaker of the Islamic Consultative Assembly has reacted to America's claim about allocating Iran's unfrozen assets for purchasing American agricultural products and called it a lie. Mohammad Bakr Ghalibaf has said that the only product the Islamic Republic has harvested from America has been decades of distrust. He further stated that instead of fulfilling its commitments, the United States only exports genetically modified soybeans, unfulfilled promises, and worthless words. Marco Rubio also said in another part of his speech in Bahrain that if the Islamic Republic does not adhere to its commitments in the Memorandum of Understanding, Trump has multiple options at his disposal. The U.S. Secretary of State emphasized that he has not discussed the creation of an Iran Reconstruction Fund with Persian Gulf countries, and so far, no money has been transferred to Iran either.
Regarding the issue of financing that Iran does, if Iran uses proxy financing, this agreement simply won't be implemented and won't work. Such a strategy inherently undermines any stable, lasting accord. They've only received these waivers for a limited 60-day period, purely to give these crucial negotiations a chance to move forward, allowing us to assess genuinely achievable solutions. As I've stated and will reiterate clearly, if Iran truly desires a good and real agreement, one that is comprehensive and verifiable, the United States stands fully ready to engage and finalize it. And the president knows this too. And if they don't do this, the president has his own options to make his next decisions.
Jamshid Barzega, journalist and political analyst from Toronto, Canada, has joined us. Mr. Barzega, the more we go forward, it's becoming clearer now that a large part of these American promises have a lot of conditions. For example, even this very release of Iran's money. The talk is that they have to buy American agricultural products. How really possible is it for especially the more hardline body of the Revolutionary Guard to digest such a thing? And do you think figures like Ghalibaf can sell this to their base inside Iran?
Greetings to you and to your esteemed viewers. It was frankly clear right from the beginning that it had been frequently emphasized no mere memorandum of understanding could possibly resolve the deep-seated and complex problems the Islamic Republic has created. These fundamental issues affect its relationships with neighboring countries, with America, and indeed the broader international community. This situation became particularly acute following events like the closure of the Strait of Hormuz, which directly contributed to a significant rise in global oil prices. Prior to these specific escalations, these underlying problems already remained firmly entrenched. Beyond the nuclear program, the pressing issue involves the Islamic Republic's ballistic missile program and its network of proxy groups. These were significant underlying conditions and explicit reasons for the war's commencement from its very outset. While these two key concerns were not formally addressed in the Memorandum of Understanding, their absence did not imply they had been overlooked or forgotten. In this joint statement issued by the Gulf Cooperation Council member states and the U.S. after Marco Rubio's visit, concerns were reiterated. Specifically, in addition to the ongoing nuclear issue and the regional countries' apprehensions about the Islamic Republic's nuclear programs, two topics were explicitly raised again. These included Iran's ballistic missile programs and its continued support for various proxy groups, both contributing to regional instability. Ironically, these very activities, seen as threats by the international community, have been presented by the Islamic Republic as its own strategic victories and achievements. But it's now fundamentally clear that such a desired outcome hasn't materialized. Even if Washington were to accept such a proposition, it would be unacceptable to key regional players, not only Israel, but also other regional countries who unequivocally witnessed during the recent conflict how both proxy forces and the missile program truly endangered their very existence, will certainly not simply overlook these pressing issues. Regarding economic incentives for Iran, progress has been notably sparse and specific. So far, only two key developments have genuinely materialized. One is the lifting of maritime restrictions, which is vital for allowing essential goods, as food and medicine, to enter Iran, serving critical humanitarian needs. The second is the temporary 60-day suspension of sanctions on Iran's oil and oil product sales, offering a brief economic reprieve. However, as officials like Senator Rubio, along with even proponents of these negotiations like Vance, have clearly stated, these measures are strictly provisional. Any subsequent economic relief will be entirely contingent upon the Islamic Republic's future actions and behavior. The behavior of the Islamic Republic practically shows that such matters are exceedingly risky, especially with the unprovoked attack they carried out today on a commercial cargo ship near Oman. Existing doubts regarding their intentions and stability in the region will undoubtedly increase further. My perception is that the hardline forces inside the Islamic Republic do not currently have the upper hand. The nation is in a very difficult position, largely due to its dire economic state. This economic fragility stems from extensive damages incurred during the prolonged war, which crippled infrastructure and depleted resources, alongside the lingering impact of sanctions. Furthermore, the catastrophic January massacre has profoundly deepened the chasm between the people and the Islamic Republic, eroding public trust and leaving the regime politically vulnerable. Dissenting voices, far from being new, have become a normalized part of the political landscape, especially under Ali Khamenei's leadership. Hardline elements have grown accustomed to these internal pressures and strategically employ such public displays of discontent as a powerful pressure tool in their ongoing negotiations with America, aiming to extract concessions or influence diplomatic outcomes. Otherwise, what we observed regarding the significant acceptance of the Memorandum of Understanding within the Supreme National Security Council of the Islamic Republic is that all military commanders voted positively, signaling broad support. Simultaneously, other prominent officials, like Ghulam Ali Haddad Adel, are actively attempting to modify a statement attributed to Mojtaba Khamenei. This is crucial because Khamenei reportedly held a different principal opinion. Their objective is to reinterpret it, asserting that Mojtaba Khamenei is in fact in favor of negotiations and has issued his permission. In the current situation, in my opinion, the Islamic Republic is looking to be able to get these concessions, including one in Lebanon and another one, in fact, getting economic incentives, which, of course, as I mentioned, are all conditional. Aside from the discussion of suspending oil sanctions, unfreezing Iran's blocked assets, and also that $300 billion fund, we saw again in this very joint statement by the Gulf Cooperation Council and the US that it will be conditional and can be revoked at any time, and its continuation completely depends on the actions and behaviors of the Islamic Republic, including good neighborly relations with regional countries and cutting support for proxy groups. It is increasingly evident today that the Islamic Republic has not achieved much despite its initial propaganda. The diplomatic negotiations, too, are now significantly stalled, a fact underscored by Pakistan's announcement that a halt in talks does not equate to outright failure. Consequently, a substantial portion of the critical 60-day deadline is practically being squandered, with neither party having made any meaningful progress towards a resolution.
Thank you, Jamshid Barzagar, journalist and political analyst from Toronto, Canada. The World Organization Against Torture, in its Global Torture Index report, has named Iran as one of the world's highest-risk countries in terms of torture, impunity, and state violence. In its report, this organization warned that the intensification of repression after last year's military clashes has increased the risk of torture, ill treatment, arbitrary detention, and other serious human rights violations. This organization pointed to issues such as the institutionalization of torture and laws, high execution rates, punishments like flogging and amputation, the lack of an independent mechanism to address victims' complaints, and the particular danger for lawyers, journalists, and ethnic minorities. Iran is also one of the few countries that has never joined the UN Convention Against Torture since its adoption. We are privileged to welcome Roya Barouman, a prominent human rights activist, joining us from France. Thank you for your presence. A significant report alleges that torture is profoundly institutionalized in Iran. Could you please explain in detail what the meaning and description of this institutionalization truly are?
Thank you very much for your invitation. The profound meaning behind the institutionalization of torture and its systematic nature within the Islamic Republic's governance framework is that it has entirely transcended being an extraordinary measure, becoming tragically integrated into the normal mechanisms of the government itself. Torture, in this context, is not an anomaly or the desperate act of a few rogue individuals. Rather, it functions as one of the standard accepted tools within the state's operational repertoire. This implies a deliberate policy embedded within the system, far from an exceptional circumstance arising from a breakdown in oversight or an isolated incident of abuse. Beyond a mere absence of political will to combat these horrific practices, we observe a judiciary that demonstrably lacks any true independence. This subservient judicial system not only tolerates, but actively relies upon torture and coerced confessions as primary instruments for securing convictions. By doing so, it effectively legitimizes and indeed encourages a very environment conducive to torture. Instead of upholding justice, this judiciary systematically fails to hold anyone accountable for these egregious violations, thereby perpetuating a cycle of impunity, theft day reality. People who use torture, well, it's because they don't have evidence. And so they need torture. They need confessions from the accused. So that evidence and, well, evidence and more. I mean, no country, when you have the rule of law, you can't just convict someone based solely on torture, on a person's confession against themselves. But in the Islamic Republic, or if you look at the Omid Memorial and the thousands of cases there, the use of torture as the sole evidence, and as the sole evidence is very, very common. For this reason, it is critically important that one of the largest international organizations combating torture, collaborating with NGOs worldwide, has reached significant conclusions. These pinpoint where pressure must be applied to address the situation in Iran, where individuals who fight against torture are systematically suppressed. These human rights offenders, including legal professionals, are not permitted to operate at all and are severely punished. Lawyers, in particular, are constantly harassed, unjustly prosecuted, and denied permission to carry out their vital work. They are often disbarred or imprisoned simply for advocating against torture, demonstrating a profound disregard for justice and human rights within the country. This consistent repression highlights the urgent need for international intervention and accountability.
Many countries that have various forms of punishment that are described as torture by a large part of the free world, like flogging generally in Muslim countries, or brutal caning in Eastern Muslim countries like Singapore, Indonesia, and Brunei. They do, after all, have some level of interaction with the international community, and sometimes the pressures from human rights organizations like yours and other global organizations, can ultimately have some impact on the ground for positive change. Iran has a unique situation. It's a very isolated country. In these circumstances, for those involved inside Iran, what options truly exist for finding justice, for finding redress?
Look, yes, unfortunately, Iran's situation is challenging. Human rights activists inside the country cannot directly interact with the government or parliament on these crucial matters. This makes the issue much more difficult and places our reliance primarily on the international community for support. And unfortunately, the only truly effective action we can take is to thoroughly document all violations, especially now for future accountability. You see within the critical context of the recent January protests and prior public demonstrations, the government consistently insists on attributing responsibility for these significant displays of civil unrest to external forces, specifically Israel and the United States. This narrative serves to delegitimize any internal dissent. Consequently, the number of individuals subjected to severe torture to extract false confessions, claiming they were paid from abroad or ordered to participate, is alarmingly high. Therefore, meticulously documenting these individual cases right now is incredibly important. This involves precisely defining the specific events of their detention and exactly what forms of torture and abuse they endured. Such detailed evidence is crucial for seeking justice and accountability. We then compile and take these comprehensive reports to the United Nations and various international governments, aiming to expose these human rights violations and pressure for intervention. But unfortunately, when you see that the US government negotiates with Iran, and the only thing it doesn't consider is the issue of torture and human rights, or Europe, which negotiated with Iran over nuclear issues, and again the US too, and this issue was completely marginalized. It ties our hands, meaning the message given to Iran through these kinds of negotiations is this: don't put us in danger, but do whatever you want with your own people. This is the real message. Now, they might talk about it, sometimes express concern about executions. But as long as negotiations with Iran regarding human rights that Iran has committed to, meaning it has pledged not to torture under the Convention on Civil and Political Rights, and it comes and goes and reports to the Human Rights Commission, negotiates, these commitments must be taken seriously. If these aren't taken seriously, our situation will just stay like this. Thanks.
Thanks to Roya Barumand, a dedicated French human rights activist, and to everyone watching this evening.